Nope. Nope again. Definitely a nope. Yes. Yes. Nope. Perfect. Hello everybody, Mike here with Hardware Canucks, and today is the day that we're able to talk a little bit more about the RX 7900 series. So this is the XTX. The XT is actually being tested right now for the review that's going to be coming out on December the 12th. So today is the unboxing embargo, but I wanted to do something a little bit differently, and I just want to bring you along on a little journey here, because it used to be this Sentry was my ITX system. It has been used for everything. It has been used to 3D print components, it has been used to test coolers, and so on and so forth. It is sort of being put out to pasture and took it basically back from home. It's gonna be used for a couple of other projects here at the office. So I needed to have a replacement. Initially, I thought that was going to be with an RTX 4080 card, but like you saw, none of those really fit in my case of choice, and that is this guy. This is the Fractal Ridge. So what I actually wanted to do in this video is make this sort of unboxing experience a little bit more relevant for a lot of you guys, and that is to talk about a system build with the RX 7900 XTX in an ITX system and explain why this card and the XT are just so perfectly designed for ITX systems right now in a day where GPUs seem to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So let's start with the obvious here and something that I hinted at in the introduction. The RX 7900 XTX, well, at least AMD's reference design, is pretty compact all things considered, so it shouldn't have any problems fitting into most ITX cases that support 2.5 slot GPUs that are about 300 millimeters long. Something you might not have picked up before is that the RX 7900 XT is actually a bit smaller than the XTX, so its compatibility will be even broader. The problem with a lot of these cards nowadays though, especially the custom ones, isn't their length anymore, it's their height, triple slot or even more, and especially their width. They're thick boys. So I want to actually show you a live demonstration of what I'm talking about here. So this is the XTX, and this is the RTX 4080 Founders Edition. Then there's the custom cards, and while I put these up here, you can actually see why people are getting a little bit frustrated in the SFF market. It's almost like board partners are in this competition to see who could design the most ridiculously over-engineered and massive cooling solution. And look, that isn't to say custom cards based on the 7900 series aren't going to be just as ridiculous as what NVIDIA partners are doing, because I'm sure some of them will be, at least if the Sapphire RX 6950 XT right here is any indication. But the Ridge is a bit more forgiving in this area, so it's more of an exception in the ITX market rather than the absolute rule. Another thing small form factor builders will also love is the standard power connectors on this GPU, so you won't have to worry about crazy adapters getting in the way of cable management. And cable management, well, that's already a challenge in a lot of ITX builds to begin with. But on the other hand, I've got to say a native 16-pin cable is also a hell of a lot easier to manage than two 8-pins. Overall though, the traditional downdraft cooler design is straightforward, and it'll need to be enough to cool the XTX's 350 watts and the XT's 315 watts of board power. And that design, well, that can be a positive or a negative depending on the ITX case you're using. Some with enough ventilation like the PATX and even this Ridge are perfectly designed for the 7900's layout, but that kind of power does lead to a lot of heat being dumped into the case, so you'll need to plan things very well, especially considering the card doesn't have the usual exhaust grill on the backplate. And speaking of the backplate, it's something AMD's made a big deal about, since their connector selection is better than NVIDIA's in almost every way. Whether or not most people will put these higher level connectivity options to good use, well, I guess we'll just have to see how monitor technology progresses in the future. AMD's also put some thought into the backplate design with a few little subtle touches of red here and there, but it's not like you're really gonna see this backplate in most ITX builds anyways. But I do think that it is pretty cool and it shows a more holistic design. But you know what else is cool? These fans from Be Quiet.
This is the most desirable fan in the Air Kingdom, and she's looking for a mate to release all the static pressure through the tiny gaps in the body of a radiator. Look closely at her blades and you'll notice a superior tip clearance, all for higher airflow. It is hard to imagine a better defense system when the corners are deployed, but she can also modulate her power for different mates while keeping a discreet profile. Choose Be Quiet and soar above the competition with the new Silent Wings 4 and Silent Wings Pro 4.
Alright, so other than the Fractal Ridge and the 7900 XTX, what are the other components that I'm putting into this build? Well, I'm actually going with an all AMD build this time around with a Ryzen 7 7700X, which is paired with the ROG Strix X670E. Right now, this is one of the only, if not the only, X670 ITX motherboard around, since most other companies seem to have focused on bringing out B650 ITX boards. Either way, it's got a couple of nice quality of life touches I wanted to talk about. For example, the Strix Hive that houses audio connectors, USB-C, a volume knob, and even a handy button to turn on and off AMD's PBO without supposedly rebooting your system. Now that's something I'll be using a lot of here. The other clutch add-on for ITX users is the FPF2 card that groups a bunch of I/O into a right angle setup so it's easier to reach in the ultra tight confines of a small form factor build. For cooling, well, I'm gonna install the Scythe Big Shuriken 3 Revision B. ITX coolers are perfectly able to keep the 7700X chugging along when gaming, and that's exactly what I'm using it for here. Don't believe me? Well, check out the video I just linked in the corner. It covers how ITX coolers handle the Ryzen 7000 series, and it turns out they perform better than you might expect. Memory and SSD, well, that's being handled by a kit of G.Skill Expo DDR5 6000 modules and a crucial P5. Honestly, we use these P5s everywhere at the office, in every test system, and they haven't let us down yet. Oh, and the power supply is a Silverstone SX1000, because guess what? The Ridge does support SFX-L power supplies. I also wanted to mention how I'm gonna save a little bit of vertical space, and that is using these guys. These are 180-degree 8-pin PCIe connectors. So anyways, with all that out of the way, let's get to building this thing.